If you ever played Left 4 Dead and thought to yourself, wow, this game really hates me specifically, well, congratulations, you've met the director. The director is an invisible AI system that controls basically everything, from enemies to items to pacing to tension even. At the exact moment your entire team collapses, because someone said, well, this part is easy. The whole idea behind the director is pretty simple. Valve didn't want the game to feel and to play the same way twice. They wanted it to feel like a horror movie that's being edited in real time. So instead of fixed enemy spawns and scripted moments, the director watches how you're playing and decides what should happen next. And by decides, of course, it judges you. At any given moment, the director is tracking the player's stress. It looks at your health, how much damage you've taken, how often someone is getting grabbed, pinned, or even launched into another dimension, and how fast your team is moving. If everyone is hurt, low on ammo, and begging for pills every 5 seconds, the director goes, okay, let's calm down a moment. But if everyone is healthy, confident, or even laughing, well, the director immediately says, oh, we're feeling brave today, aren't we? And spawns a horde. And this is also the reason why Left 4 Dead has such a good pacing compared to other zombie shooter games. You have quiet moments when nothing happens except creepy ambient noises, and you start to relax, and then boom, more and more zombies. Always, right after someone reloads, always from behind every single time. But let's talk about enemies. Common infected aren't just placed on the map. The director chooses when and where they show up, where they come from, and how annoying they are allowed to be. That's why you can clear a hallway, turn around 2 seconds, and suddenly it's full of zombies again. You didn't miss them, the director waited. Special infected are where the director really shows your personality. These things don't just spawn randomly. A director plans attacks, a smoker pulls someone away, a hunter jumps on their face, and then a boomer shows up. Just to make sure everyone is blind while a horde rolls in. In Left 4 Dead 2, it gets even more personal. Chargers exist just to launch you into walls at illegal high speeds. And jockeys exist just to prove that controlling another human like a shopping cart is somehow a fair game design. Items. Items are also controlled by the director, which explains why medkits feel like a legendary loot drop. There are multiple possible spawn points, but the director, he decides which one will be activated. If your team is barely alive, it might place a medkit here or there right around the corner, like a miracle. If your team is doing great, it places nothing. Lets you argue about who wasted the last pills 20 minutes ago. Weapons, of course, also work the same way. Sometimes you get stacked early and feel unstoppable. Other times, you're halfway through the campaign, using still the gun you found in the tutorial. This isn't bad luck. It's the director keeping you uncomfortable. The director also absolutely hates lone wolves. If you run ahead, lag behind, or stop to admire the environments, it notices. And then it sends a special infected to personally escort you back to the team. In pieces, of course. This is how the game teaches teamwork, without ever saying a word. Stay together or suffer. One of the director's favorite tricks is false safety. It will give you a long stretch where nothing happens. No hordes, no specials, just footsteps, breathing, and that one teammate who just keeps shooting car lamps, by accident of course. During these moments, the director is letting your guard down. It wants you to think that you are safe. It wants you to stop checking corners, because the second you do, it's hit you with everything at once. This is also why safe rooms feel so good. Reaching a safe room isn't just a checkpoint, it's emotional relief. The director intentionally pushes the pressure right before the door. You will notice that hordes and special affected love getting in the way of the safe room, when it's literally in your sight. That's not random, that's the director going, you're not done today. Then there's the crescendo events, like the one that you see right now. These are the moments where the director takes off the gloves and says, okay, now you survive. Things like calling an elevator, starting a generator, or holding out while something painfully slow happens. During these moments, the director switches from dynamic pacing to controlled chaos. It still adapts to how you're doing, but the goal is pure pressure. If your team falls apart, the director doesn't feel bad. It warned you with ominous music. The director also understands psychology way better than it needs to. It knows that losing control is scarier than losing health. That's why so many special effects that are designed around movement denial. Smokers drag you away, hunters pin you down, chargers send you flying, jockeys turn your keyboard into a suggestion of commands. The director uses these enemies to create panic, because panic leads to mistakes. Mistakes lead to death. Difficulty modes don't replace the director though. They change how aggressive it's allowed to be. On easier difficulty, the director is more forgiving. It gives you more items, spreads out attacks, and lets you recover more. On higher difficulty, the director becomes ruthless. It stacks special infected more often, tightens the breathing room, and basically asks you, how confident are you really? The core logic stays the same behind them, but the gloves come off. And then of course, there's replayability. This director's biggest legacy. You can play the same campaign dozens of times and still get surprised. Different spawn times, different item placements, different attack patterns. The map stays the same of course, but the experience changes. That's why Left 4 Dead never really gets old. It's not a puzzle you solve and then move on. It's a system you keep fighting with. The director also quietly sharpens the entire co-op genre. A lot of games after Left 4 Dead tried to copy this. The idea, of course, of dynamic pacing and AI-driven difficulty. Some did it okay, but most didn't. Because the hard part isn't making the game harder or easier, or making an AI that works behind it. It's making it feel natural. The director doesn't just react, it tells a story. Even if that story is usually everything was fine until it wasn't. But you're probably still wondering after all this, how does the director actually work? Well, internally, the director tracks something called player intensity. This is a constantly changing value for each player, and for the team as a whole of course as well. Intensity goes up when, first the player takes damage, you're attacked by special infected, a horde gets activated, teammates are incapacitated or die, you're surrounded or under pressure. Intensity goes down when combat stops, when you haven't taken any damage for a while, when you're moving calmly, when the team regroups. When intensity is high, the director backs off. When intensity is low, of course, the director ramps things up again. This is why the game often feels mean. Right after a calm moment, you didn't do anything wrong, your intensity dropped, so the director decided it was time for the next spike. Now the director works in different phases. The game constantly switches between the relax, build and peak phases. The relax phase is minimal ambient enemies, mostly ambient tension. This is why you hear distant infected sounds and think something's coming. The director is intentionally doing very little here. Then the build phase, small attacks, maybe one special infected, light pressure. The director is testing you, how you react to it, and if you are struggling. Then there's the peak phase, the full horde. Coordinated special infected, pure chaos. This is the big moment. Once this happened, the director must eventually calm things down again. It is not allowed to stay at peak forever. The cycling between these phases is hard-coded. Even on the hardest difficulty, the director is forced to give you breathing room eventually. Enemies spawn using spawn rules, of course. This is not pure randomness. The director checks distance from prayers. Enemies can't just pop in front of you, of course. The line of sight, navigation paths. Infected need valid routes to reach you. They can't just spawn in some random place behind a fence that they are not even allowed to climb. Then there's cooldowns that it can't spam endlessly, of course. For the special infected there are additional limits. A maximum of numbers can only exist at once. Each type has a cooldown. Certain combinations are preferred, while others are being avoided. The director waits for a good moment, choke points, distractions, or splits. That's why attacks often feel coordinated. They're not scripted, but they are intentional. There are many possible spawn locations baked into each map. The director chooses which one he will activate based on team health, difficulty, recent damage, and current supplies. If a team is struggling, the chance for health items goes up. If the team is strong, the chance goes down. Important for the director, he cannot spawn infinite amount of supplies. It works within a strict limit, which is why it still feels fair instead of generous to the point of being obvious. And all this is just a small drop in what is actually happening behind the scenes. But other people are much better at explaining this than I could ever be. The magic behind Left 4 Dead is still, even after nearly 2 decades, still there. And every single day it still is fun to play. The modding community is absolutely great in this game, and Valve really did its job there. When people talk about Left 4 Dead, even years later, they're not just remembering all these levels and guns. They're remembering moments, and behind every of these moments is the director, quietly watching, adjusting, and waiting just for the right moment to ruin your plans. I hope, of course, you enjoyed my second rambling video. I'm trying to make it better for you to actually enjoy it. But I hope I still made you a bit more interested in this game. I hope, of course, you enjoyed this video. And I hope I see you in the next one. Goodbye.